Hello, this is Neil, designer of Vampire Hunter V. I'm going to be showing you guys how to do a finite state machine using scripts because I was asked how to do it. So basically it'll allow you to go from like idle state, which you see now, to walking state, which is a different animation, and how to smoothly switch between those two states, or go into this attack state or that attack state, or into a jump state, and it'll show you how to go to those different states, or duck state, block state, so forth. And it will change the animation. And it's really good to use a finite state machine for your character because you're probably going to have moves that are going to be hard to work around without a finite state machine. Typically they're done, you'll see online, people will teach how to do a finite state machine with a switch statement, which is fine, but I think that it's easier to manage with scripts. Keep in mind that if you only have the trial version of Gamemaker, you're not going to be able to make a full game with using scripts because you only get a limited amount of scripts. I think it's like, I don't know, 5 or something. You'll be able to follow this tutorial though with it though, so that's fine. Just keep in mind if you're going to make a full game, you're not going to be able to do that many scripts, and also you're not going to be able to do that many what's it called? The actual. You're not going to be able to do that many sprites either, so it's kind of hard to make a full game with just the trial version. But anyway, you'll definitely be able to follow along with this tutorial, so let's go ahead and get started. So before we actually start coding this finite state machine so you can see how it works, let's go ahead and just describe the different things we're going to need. There's going to be like 5 different tools that we're going to use in order to make the state machine. Now I do have a longer video showing how to do finite state machines. It's like 1 hour and 40 minutes. If you want to check that out, it's like a real-time video where I go through a lot of different details. But in this video I want to try and make it shorter for people that don't have that kind of attention span. So the first thing we're going to be using is an enumerator. So the enum states, or you can name this whatever you want. So this is just going to be the word that's going to refer to whatever states you want. So all this thing does is it takes words like this and it basically allows you to use words instead of numbers. That's all this whole entire function. As you can see, I have a lot of states in my game. And so this is basically 0 right here. This is 1, 2, 3. So instead of having to write like 0 or 1 or 2 or 3, how the computer sees it, now you can actually write a word, idle, and the computer will know that when you say states.idle, like when you write this, I'll write it up here. When you write states. Oops, I probably should write it in an actual line here. When you write states.idle like this, the computer knows basically you're writing 0. And so it does matter, where you kind of put them at. There we go, turn that back. So it does matter like where you put these at. This is going to be 0, this is going to be 1, but it just know that whenever you refer to one of these letters or words, that's all you need to know. That's what the enum states does. So you can write whatever word you want here, but we're going to be using states. And yes, that converts numbers into words. So the other thing we're going to be using is just a simple variable. In this case, it's state, and it's going to equal our default enumerator. So basically this means this right here, this whole line, is the same thing as state equals 0. That's all this is saying to the computer. Right, so we're going to have that, and that's basically going to allow us to refer back to which enumerator we're in. That is which number we're in. Then we're going to be using an array. And arrays can be kind of daunting at first, but they're really simple. Just kind of think of an array as like drawers. So let me go down here for a second. Let's say we have a state array, right? So we're going to call this state array. And then you have this right here, 0. And then you'd have state array. I'm making it state array instead of states array, so you can see the difference here. Like that. So now we have state array 0 and state array 1. If I want to refer to any of these 0 or 1, it's kind of like, you think about alarms, right? You have like alarm 0, alarm 1. So if I want to refer to 0, state array 0, I can, or state array 1. Think of these as drawers. So I have a whole entire dresser called state array, but what drawer do I want in my state array? In this case, do I want drawer 1 or drawer 2? And you can also have, drawer 0 and drawer 1. You can also have drawer, 2 and 3, like that. And then you can have those equal something. So it's a way to have like a variable that can equal multiple things. So it's like, this is the variable state array. And then which drawer of that variable do you want? There's multiple of them, like a drop-down list. What are you trying to access? So in this case, this is 0. Why is this 0? Because remember, my enumerator up here is saying that idle equals 0. So states.idle is the same as saying 0, right? Which is this right here. This right here is the same as saying 0. So that means that this is states array 0, this is states array 1, states array 2. And why is that? Because up here you can see walk is 1 and so forth, right? And then jump is 2. So that's it. That's what we're doing here. So this is basically, just imagine this is 0, 1, 2, because that's really what is being said here. Even though you see words, it's literally 0, 1, 2, and so forth. The numerator is just the numerator. This function up here just allows us to rename those numbers as words, so it makes more sense to us. And then I'm saying that state array 0, so what's in this drawer? What's in my, so this is my dresser state array. Well, what's in states idle or 0, the 0 drawer? I'm making it equal a script name. So my script name is in this drawer, and drawer walk is my walk script, and then drawer jump is my jump script, and so forth. Okay, so that's that function. Then, well, not function, that's that piece of code that we're using. The next thing we're using is this function right here. And what this function does, the script execute function, it's going to execute whatever script name you have here. You might be saying, well, hey, you don't have a script name there. Well, remember, right now it's states array. Now imagine instead of this saying states array state, that just said states array 0. Right, so I put 0 here. So if I put 0 there, it's going to be calling up what? Well, let's go back. States array 0, which is idle, is going to call up this script right here, my player idle state. If I put 1 in there, states array 1, it's going to call up my player walk state. So if I change that to 1, then this script would execute my walk state and I would automatically be in my walk state. But because I put state, I'm going to explain that in a second, what that does. But that's all this does. This calls up the script you want. And because this state array is being linked to a certain script, it's going to call up whatever state array I tell it to call up. So if I tell it state array states crouch, it's going to call up my crouch state. And that's all this is going to do. This is going to grab that script. It's going to grab my crouch script and so forth. Finally, you have the scripts themselves. Think about scripts as blocks of code that you would write in your step event. So because I'm using this function to call up my script in the step event, this is where that block of code is going to run. So imagine that this code right here is the same as if I had a region like this. See, I have this region of code here. So I have MPC region of code. I can open this up. Here's region, and then down here's end region. I have all this code in between there, like that. And that's like a block of code that's hidden inside of a dresser, right? And it's going to run that code in my step event. So imagine that when I call up my script, whatever code's in my script, it's going to put that block of code in here temporarily, and it's going to run that code until I tell it to do something else. So it's like a region like this, that imagine there's no code in here, and then when this script executes something, it say executes my idle script code then boom drops in here like this, and then it continues to run my idle script in my step event until I tell it to change. So all this code here will be my idle code until I tell it to change, and then it will change to my walk code or whatever. So if you look over here at my scripts, don't worry, we're actually going to code this step by step. I just want to make sure you understand all the pieces individually before we actually start coding. And this will also help people that just already know how to do state machines. This will help them understand the logic so they don't have to watch the rest of the video. Alright, so I have my scripts here, my player script. Let's go to my idle state. So when that calls up my idle state, it's going to run all this code right here. And all this code now exists in my So all that code now exists in my step event, because remember, I'm using that function in my step event to call up my idle script. And then if the script changes to, let's say, my walk script, my walk state here, my walk script, then it's going to run all this code inside my step event. Right? So I'm just switching out different pieces of code in my step event, and that allows me to control my player and to do different things with my player, or whatever object you want to have your finite state machine. So that is basically a finite state machine, at least how we're going to be using it with scripts. And again, you can think about, I'm going to get rid of this one, we don't need that right now. There we go. So you can think about a finite state machine as blocks of code that are hidden inside of jars that will be called up, and that's going to be the jar that we're using. Or imagine that you have different pieces of code inside of different jars in a dresser, and depending what jar you open, so let's say these are jars in a dresser, depending what jar I open, that's the code it's going to run at that time, and only the code that's in that jar is going to run. All the code in the other jars in the dresser are dormant, they're not running. And if you close that jar, and you can only have one jar open at a time, so if you close that jar, you have to open an, okay, two rules. One, you have to have a jar open in a state machine. So there has to be at least one jar open, and there will only be one jar at a time. So if I open jar 1, then all the other jars are closed. If I open jar 4, then jar 1 now closes. So it's only one jar open at a time. Jar 2, or let's say this is jar 0, 1, 2, like that. If I have jar 0 open, the second I open jar 2 here, then jar 0 has closed. See how you see the highlight? So imagine just like this, how you see the highlight. Whenever I click on one of these jars, the other one closes. So I can only have one open at a time, and I must always have one open. Okay, so that's how a finite state machine works, and then whatever code is in that jar is a code that's going to run inside your step event. So it allows you to switch between these different states depending on what code you have in there. You can have, like for example, in jar 0, you can have the code for your idle, and it's going to tell your character, your player, what to do when they're idling. Therefore, you're going to tell it, play my idle animation, for example, and obviously you're not moving. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started coding now. Wait, sorry, I lied. We're not going to be coding just yet. There's one other thing I forgot to mention. That is, why do we have this little piece of code here, which is just basically a variable equaling 0, or in this case, he's doing states idle. And why does it equal 0? Because remember, this up here turns zeros into words. So idle is 0, walk is 1, jump is 2, and so forth. So the reason why I have this is because, so state equals, in this case, for default, I'm saying state equals 0, which means at default, we're in our idle state because I've named 0 idle. That's all I've done there. And which means, and because state equals 0, well, then we go back to the step event, and what does this do? This means that instead of putting 0 here, I put state there. That is my local variable. So whatever state equals is what is going to be here. So if state equals 0, right, then the 0 is 0. In other words, state array is 0. And what is state array 0, which is here? State array 0 is here. Remember, states.idle is the same thing as 0. It's just another way to write it now. That's all enumerators allow me to do. Enum states, or just enum in this case, which I've called states. You can name this whatever you want. So states.idle is the same thing as saying 0, like I said, and then 1 and 2. So that's all this is doing, is just renaming numbers into words. So this is the same thing as 0 here. And so because state equals states idle right here, that means that this is 0. And so when this function runs, it's going to go, oh, so by default it's going to go, oh, okay, we're at array 0, right? What jar are we in? We're in 0 because state equals 0 here. And since state array 0 equals player idle state, that's the script it's linking to, because I have equaling that, then it's going to call it my idle script. And so this script function now knows, because state equals 0 and 0 equals idle script, call it my idle script. And so now I'm going to be in my idle state by default. All I have to do to switch different states is make this equal a different number. How do I do that? I simply go state equals states.walk, for example. And now I'll be in my walk state instead of idle state. And I put that when I want to switch a state. And we'll get into that in a little bit, how to actually use the state machine. So for example, if I go to my scripts here, in my idle script, if I want to switch to a different state, I tell it to do that. For example, here I have, if my HSP is not equal to 0, which means I'm pushing left or right on my stick, which changes my HSP, which makes me move at a certain speed left or right. So if I'm moving, in other words, I'm no longer standing still, then I'm telling it I want my state equals states walk. And now it switches me to my walk script. So basically this line of code now says if I'm moving, then switch me to my walk state, and it does that by going back to the object here and here. So then this goes, oh, This is running my step event, so it's constantly checking this. So once that code runs, once I hit a button and I'm moving, my states array equals 1, which is walk state. So state equals 1. And why does state equal 1? Because remember, walk equals 1. Because here up here, walk is 1, and that's listed to that. And then down here, I have my state array. So 1, this is the same as saying 1. So my states array 1 equals my walk state. So what do I have inside this is my dresser state array. This is the drawer. I'm in drawer 1 of my state array, so it's drawer 1 of my dresser. And inside of drawer 1 of my dresser, I told it to equal my walk state script. And so this is going to call it my walk state script because now state equals 1. And again, state equals 1. Why? Because state equals, and in my script you saw that it was walk, and that equals 1. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. Now let's start coding. Now for a lot of you that might be all you need, and now you'll be able to code a finite state machine using scripts. But for those of you that still need more understanding, we're going to go ahead and do it ourselves, and hopefully by the time you're done coding this step by step, you'll fully understand it and how it works. It's quite daunting for a beginner. I remember when I first learned all this stuff, it was like, whoa, this is I just kind of coded it and didn't really fully understand what I just did. I recommend doing it a few times and try to change it. Try to do it yourself and try to change some things and add a new state and stuff, and you'll start to understand it. It just takes time. Just don't expect to understand it right away. If you don't, it's fine. You're going to get it eventually. Just keep coding and keep learning. All right, so let's go and open a new document here. We're going to do Gamemaker language because I don't like drag and drop because it's stupid. It's actually easier to learn GML than it is to learn drag and drop, honestly. Like drag and drop, you might be able to learn certain things very quickly, but once you start getting to a full game, you're going to realize that drag and drop is really, really difficult to make a game with, whereas GML is pretty easy to learn. Might be a slightly higher learning curve for it, but not really. Anyway, let's go ahead and name this. I'm going to name it test. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to name it test state machine. Okay. The first thing we need to do is make an object. So click over here, left click on objects, right click on the mouse, and we're going to choose create object. Sorry if I sound like I'm talking down to you. I just want to make sure that just in case someone doesn't know how to use the program, I want to tell them everything I'm doing so they know exactly how to do it. Because I hate that when I first started learning Gamemaker, a lot of these tutorials they weren't explaining what they were doing or where they were going, and I didn't understand because I didn't know the software yet. So I had to go learn the software first just to follow their tutorial. So this way you'll be able to follow my tutorial and learn a little bit of Gamemaker in the process, hopefully, if you don't already. But anyway, if you feel like I'm talking down to you, just ignore that part that you already know. I'm not trying to talk. I want to make it as accessible to everyone as possible. Let's get going. I'm talking too much. All right, so first thing we need to do is just add some sort of sprite, which you click on new sprite right here. Just left mouse click on that. And then we're going to go to edit the image. Click on edit image, left mouse click. Hold down control key. Use your mouse scroll wheel and you can scroll the size if you want to. We're going to grab the paint bucket tool here. Again, left mouse click is how you select things. Whenever I'm telling you to click on something, I mean left mouse click. Let's click on a color here. We'll make the player kind of a bluish color, blue-green. Fill it in. There we go. We're done. Let's name this sprite up here. I'm going to call it SPR for sprite, or you can just use S, and we'll call it player. And we're going to call this idle because this is going to be our idle state, our idle animation. Right now there's no animation, but we'll add that in a little bit. It's really easy. Our speed is 15. We'll just leave that. Top left, I don't like this. We're gonna make that middle center. So 32 by 32 because we're using a 64 by 64 object. Everything's done. Make sure 64 by 64, 32 by 32. If you run into weird issues, it's most likely because this got messed up. So always make sure you're in the middle center. If your animation seems wonky or your character kind of bounces around, make sure that this is lining up in all your animations. That is inside your sprites. So where did this go? Well, this one up here. If you now click on sprites up here, that's where the animation is. So that's what we're linking to. We still have our object, which isn't named yet. So let's go ahead and name our object by right-clicking on it. Or you can either right-click on it and choose rename, or a shortcut is hitting F2 on your keyboard. Bam. And we're going to name this obj for object underscore player. Okay, that's our object player because this is an object-oriented language, GML, so we have to put all our code inside of objects. So that is, you can't just run a script. The script needs to run through an object. You need to call up your scripts in an object. which is why that's why we call up the script inside of our object. Let's go ahead and open this up now by double clicking on it. That's left mouse click, just double click it. Okay, so now let's go ahead and add a create event right here, and a step event, which is here, and then the first one. Boom. So now we have a create event and step event. You can erase all this here if you want to. You can also put a description if you want. If you put a description, you put it right here. So if, let's say I put player, for example, it's gonna say player next to it. So if you just want some sort of shorthand to know what that piece of code's doing, you can put something there. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to do is I actually want to start this time with an array, because I want to show you how the array works. Because I think if I do this way, I'm going to go ahead and if you hold down the control on your keyboard and then use your mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out. That's pretty much universal in this software. So to zoom in and out of stuff, you just hold down control and scroll wheel. I don't know if there's another way to do it or not. That's how I know how to do it. There might be another way. If anyone knows how to scroll a different way besides that method, scroll in and out or zoom in and out, go ahead and say it inside the, well, I think you can do it here too, right? Yeah, so you can also use these buttons up here. So I guess that's another way. Okay, so we're going to call this sprites array, just like I did. Not sprites array, sorry. States array. You can name this whatever you want, but states array. And we're gonna actually name this one 0, like that. So use the brackets. States array 0. And we're gonna have that equal something. So we're gonna have it equal script. We haven't written the script yet, but we're gonna have it equal, I don't know, let's just go player idle state. That's gonna be our script name. And then we're gonna do states array 1 equals player walk state. Right, so we have 2 states now. So right now this means nothing. Nothing is going to happen. This is just saying this equals this, which is nothing right now because this is just another variable that doesn't equal anything. We need to make that be a script, which means we need to make scripts really fast. But I want to do this because I want to show how the states array work, or how an array works and what we're doing exactly. So hopefully you kind of already have an idea because I just explained it all in the beginning of this video. If you didn't watch the beginning of the video, definitely watch that because I explained what all this means. And I'm going to explain it again, but it'll help you better understand it by understanding what I'm doing before I'm doing it. Let's make a new script. So right click, we're going to create a script. We're going to call this player idle state, like that. And make another script. Right click, create script, and this one you just start typing. You don't have to backspace it, so you know it automatically is going to do it because it's highlighted already. We're going to call this player walk state. All right, those are our 2 scripts. Let's double click on the walk or the idle state again. Up here, type 3 brackets, and then which is next to your shift key, or forward slashes, not brackets. Sorry, forward slashes next to the right shift key, and then we're going to type just the name of it. So player idle state, like that. Double click over here on the walk, or right click here since we've already opened it, go to Windows, and you can see these are the things we've opened so far. So we can go back to our walk state here, or you can double click it here, either way. Again, 3 forward slashes, and then player walk state, like this. Oops. Okay, so now we have them named. Now we got to start. We don't have to put any code in here now. We can just leave it like that, and that's going to be good. Then we're going to go back to our object player, or you can just double click here. Now we're back in object player, and you can see that those are highlighted orange now because they're referring to a script. And so now our state array 0, so this is our dresser. The name of our dresser, we've named it states array, and this is drawer 1 or drawer 0, and then this is states array. That means we're still in the same dresser. This is drawer number 1 of that dresser. In drawer number 0 we have our idle state script. In drawer number 1 we have our player walk state script. Right? So that's all that's happening so far. So now if I refer to states array 0, I'm actually referring to what's in that drawer, which is my idle state. So if I want to call up my idle script, I just tell it states array 0. If I want to call up my walk script, I just say states array 1. So now if I go over here and I use that function, and that function that calls up my scripts, what script I want it to call up. So the function is script. And by the way, if you ever forget the name of a function, just like type any word you remember about it. If you remember script, then you can see, oh yeah, that's right. So I remember script execute was the name of the function. And then you don't have to worry about arguments because we're not going to have any arguments, but you can also call up arguments in your scripts. But in this case, we're just going to call the name of the script itself. But I don't want to call the name of the script. That's why I made the array for, right? So I can call whatever dresser I want. So in this case, if I say states array, which is the name of my dresser, what drawer do I want in my dresser? Let's say I want drawer number 0, like that. So now what does this equal? This is the same as saying, right, that line of code now means the same thing as if I wrote this. So if I wrote right, these mean the same thing, because this, remember, equals this. Right, so these two lines mean the exact same thing. Now what's the benefit of having the state array? Because now I can easily, elsewhere in my code, I can just tell it that my states array is 1 or 0 or whatever I want my state to be in. And it just makes it easier for me to say, my character changes its state, whatever, So now I can say, like in here, I can say my states array equals 1, for example. So whenever I go into my idle, I can say, if I'm moving, my states array equals 1. And that's one way I can do that. So let's just go and do that really fast, just so you understand that it's already working. The finite state machine is already set up. We're going to make it easier to access, but this is really what a state machine is right there. It's just calling up different scripts that have different code in it. So my idle code, I'm going to say something like if, well, I can't do HSP yet because we haven't set up any player movement. I probably could do that really fast. Let me think about this. So let's do that really quick. Let's go and add some player movement. So the first thing we need is we need to get inputs, right? We need to tell it whether we're pushing left or pushing A on our keyboard. If you don't understand player movement yet, you don't understand any of this right here, then you shouldn't be watching this video yet. You should go and learn how to do the basic stuff, like how to add movement to your player and stuff like that. Not to be rude, it's important to understand all that, because there's no reason to understand a finite state machine if you don't understand how to code the basic movement of your player yet. Okay, so this is a little piece of code we're going to have here, and this is just, we're going to say that our keyboard check VK left, and also we're going to do a keyboard check for ORD A, which means that the A on the keyboard. So right now we have the left key, which is the left arrow on the keyboard, and A on the keyboard, and we're going to say that equals left, the word left. The reason why we're doing that is so it's easier for us to refer back to, instead of having to write this piece of code out every single time. Now all we have to do is write left. If we write left, it means this, same thing. Right, so one thing goes down. This is like a drawer, or dresser, and only has one drawer, and that one drawer is this. Think about it that way. Then I want to copy this over, so go ahead and take the time to write that out if you want to write this out. I'm going to go ahead and just leave it here for a second. Just pause the video and then write this out. Let me go ahead and zoom in so you can make sure you can see all that. Definitely watch in HD. HD allows you to see text really easy. Okay, cool. So then we're going to copy that. So just select it all and then Control-C on the keyboard to copy it. And then we're going to go back over to our player object. And we're going to go into our create event here. And up here somewhere, let's just write movement. So 2 slashes, which is how you write notes. If you do 2 slashes, it means the computer's not going to try to read this as code. It's just notes for yourself. And we'll call this get inputs. And we're going to say that left equals 0. Each one of these is just replace it with 0 for now. So this is basically just like a default. We're just saying this don't do anything until we actually press something. So now we have to link our variables to something. So we're just going to link them to this right here, which is zeros for now. Go back to our player idle state. Now we could put this inside of this code inside of the state, or inside of the step event of the player. The reason why I'm not putting inside the step event, I'm putting it inside of the actual state itself, inside the script, is because remember, our step event is going to be always calling up one of our states. At any given time, our step event is always going to have one of our states inside of it. By default, it has idle state in there. Now, the benefit of putting your movement, your get inputs inside of the the scripts instead of directly inside of your step event is this means that if I wanted to have a state where I can't access, I don't know, let's say I don't want the player to be able to attack, or I don't want the player to be able to jump. We can have another one that says jump, right, for a spacebar or something. If I don't want the player to be able to attack in the walk state, then all I have to do is only copy these 4 lines and put that in my walk state. Now I won't be able to attack while I'm in my walk state because there's no get input for it, so I've taken away player input. This gives you a really good control over your player. So if you want certain states where you can't move, like let's say while you're talking to somebody, while you're talking to a character in the game, and the text is up, you don't want the player to be able to just walk away from that. You want them to have to finish that dialogue. Then you can just not put movement into, in other words, make a state for dialogue, and then so while you're talking, the only thing they have access to is the dialogue options to be able to talk to the person, and then you just take away the other movements. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's go ahead and keep going. Let's go ahead and write a little note above here saying something like get inputs, and then we can also put this in. We can actually put this in a region. That's another way to do it. So let's learn how to do that real quick. So region here, we're going to name it get inputs. And this just allows us to close it up, and then we'll end region. So the pound key, end region, and then you're going to see it's going to do its own thing. And there we go. Now we have this as a collapsible drawer, and because we wrote something next to this, it turns blue when it's closed, meaning that it's an actual thing. So now we know that that's get inputs, and so that just makes your code cleaner. You can also take this and put it inside of its own script. You can make a get input script, and then you can just refer to that script here. All you have to do to refer to a script is just the same way you refer to a function. So if I made a get input script, it would just be get inputs, and that would be the script like that. And if I made a script called this, if I made a script called get inputs, then I just have to put that, and it would call up all this code. Let's go ahead and do that really quick so that it's understood how to do it. We're going to grab this code right here. There we go. We're going to Control-C to copy it, and we're going to get rid of all this. Just hit select and hit delete on the keyboard. Over here, right-click this, create script, and we're going to call it get inputs. Like that. Boom. Up here, 3 lines, 3 forward slashes, and we're going to call this get inputs. Put our 2 brackets there. You know, did I do that for these ones? Oh, okay. I didn't do that, so let's go ahead and do that here. I usually always do it like this, so the actual name of the script like that. Okay, back to get inputs. Copy and paste, Control V, and or not copy, or just Control V. We already copied it. So boom, now we have our get inputs here inside the scripts. Now whenever we refer to this script, it's going to call up all this code right here. And if ever you only want some of the movement code, some of your inputs inside of a certain state, let's say again I didn't want attack, I just wanted in walk state, I don't want you to be able to attack, then I would just copy this here and I would put that directly into the walk state. So where it says get inputs, my get input section for my walk state, I would just put that code directly in there, but leave out whatever movements I don't want. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's go back to our idle state, and then I like to put notes. It's always good to say what things are doing. So this is get inputs. In this case, we're just going to say get inputs, oops, like that. So now this is referring to that code we just wrote inside of our get inputs. It's the same thing as if I pasted all the movement code in there. Well, it's not really movement code. It's just saying if that left equals that key. We still have to actually tell, if I hit that key to do something to actually make it move. Right, so there we go. So that's all you have to do. So if I want to access my get inputs, I'm going to copy this right here, and I'm going to paste it into my walk script as well. So now I have get inputs in both of them. So we're good to go. All right, cool. So the next thing we need to do is we need to have some sort of movement code. Now we can put that movement code directly inside of the scripts themselves, or we can put that movement code in its own script, and that's what we're going to do. And then we'll just link to that script when we want to refer to what we're doing. So let's go ahead and create a new script here. We're going to call this, I don't know, calculate movement. We'll just calc for short. Calculate movement, or you can just call it movement, but I think calculate movement will make more sense what we're doing. and then calculate movement. Just name it the same thing, like that. Now we want to calculate our actual movement, which means that we want to be able to tell it to do something, to actually move when we do a certain thing. Basically, this means that we need some variables that equal stuff, and then tell our x to move. So basically we're going to say, you know, if I'm pushing left on the keyboard, make my x equal a negative number. Because remember, negative on Gamemaker, remember that the left side of the screen is 0 and the top side of the screen is 0. So for left and right movement, the left side is 0 and the right side is a big number. So if I say a negative number, we're moving left. So -4 is moving left at a 4 speed, and then +4 is moving right and right. So anyway, and then up and down would be, you know, 0 is a negative number is up and a positive number is down. So let's go ahead and write something here. Before we do that, let's go ahead and make a couple variables inside of our player, so our player object, double click it, or you can just right click Windows and go to player object. So right now we have get inputs. Let's go ahead and write some movement variables. So call this movement. We want HSP, that's a good one, and we'll say that equals 0 for now. Let's see here, we need walk speed. Let's go ahead and put a walk speed variable in there, and we'll say this is 4. Oh, I forgot to put my little close off here. I haven't been doing this. I should have been doing this. Close all these off. It's good practice to get into. I'm trying to think, what else do I need variables wise? Oh, I think I need a drag variable, and we'll say that drag equals 0.2. Right, so whenever I refer back to these numbers, it's going to go ahead and pull these numbers up, right? So it just allows me to write the code with words instead of hard coding it, which is a good practice to get into. That is using variables. I think that's all the variables we'll need for our movement. So let's go back to our calculate movement script here, and let's add some code here to tell it how to move, which is actually pretty simple. We're going to go ahead and just do HSP plus equals. I'm not going to describe what all this code means because you should already know all this stuff. Right minus left times 4, or times walk speed. I think is that what I named my variable? Yeah, I think so. So basically what this is doing is this is the same as HSP equals HSP plus something. In this case it's plus either right or left. On my, remember right or left equals what? The keyboard left or right. So if I go back to get inputs. So left equals this and right equals this. And this is basically stating whether it's going to be moving left or moving right. Just know that this, I've explained all this in my movement. I actually have a video where I explain all this, so go watch that video on movement because I explained it already. I'm not going to explain it again, it's kind of complicated, but I explain it in a way that a lot of people don't explain it, like how, you know, whether it's 0, 1, or -1. And then times our walk speed, which was 4. So basically this is making our HSP equals our HSP. So whatever HSP is at that moment, it's going to equal that number. So let's say we're at 0 right now. So 0 equals 0, you know, plus the left or right. So let's say it's 1 or something, then times 4. And so it's basically going to make our HSP equal either positive or -4, depending on if we're pushing left or right. So if we're pushing left, it's going to equal -4. If we're pushing right, it's going to equal +4. That's all this is doing. So far that won't make our character move though. Nothing's going to happen. And the reason why nothing will happen is because we haven't told X of our character to do anything. So X needs to equal HSP. We can put that down here. So X plus equals HSP. So now this means that whatever HSP equals, our X equals. So if HSP equals -4, then so does X, which means we'll be moving left. But now we don't have a way to stop. We still need a way to stop. We need at least to have a drag function. So let's go ahead and we'll just call this drag, and we're going to go HSP equals lerp. I recommend looking up what all this means. Middle mouse click on the word lerp after you type it. I don't want to explain all that because this video will be way too long if I do that. Right, but anyway, you can middle mouse click lerp and see what that means. So now this is going to allow us to, this is going to take our HSP and the drag, which is a lot lower, and it's going to say which one of the two is greater, then it's going to continue to slow us down. So this is always going to be fighting against our movement. So once we let go of either left or right, or for either the left or right arrows or A or D for movement, once we let go and stop moving, this is going to bring us to a stop, but it's not going to stop us immediately. It's going to kind of skid us to a stop, which feels really good. And then finally, once we're almost stopped, we need to tell it to actually stop us completely. So we're going to say if ABS over HSP. So ABS is basically just going to give us a positive number. So remember, our HSP can be negative or positive. We're just going to say that it's going to be a positive number. So ABS is just going to take our HSP and make it positive. And then we're going to say, if that number, which is, let's say, is going to be, something between 0 and 4. So as we're coming to a stop, the HSP in this case is always going to be either a negative or it's going to be like, maybe negative. If we're going left, it's going to be negative. If we're going right, it's going to be positive. This is just going to say it's a positive number. So now it's going to be less than or equal to 0.1, so 0.1. Then we're going to say HSP equals 0. And so you can, this is one way you can write it. You can also, you don't have to have these curly brackets there, but I like them there because it's good practice. But basically it's the same as if I would have wrote something like this. Just so you know. Oops. Right, so it's the same thing. So we have the if statement here, and then you have what it's telling to do, but you can also write it like this. Okay. So basically what this is doing is just saying that if the general number is still greater than 0, in this case greater than 0.1, so almost 0, then just make it equal 0. So once we're almost at a complete stop, just make it completely stop. Right, so anyway, there's the movement code. I think that's all we need for movement now. We should be able to move our player. We need to take our room now. We need to open it up, make sure this works before we continue on. Left click and drag the player inside the room. Hit this little play button up here. That should allow us to use left and right arrow keys to move, or A and D to move. And right now nothing's happening. Okay. Close this. So, does anyone know why nothing happened? Because we just have some code inside of a script that's not being called anywhere. So this is never running. So we need to take this drawer and put it inside of another drawer. We can put drawers inside of drawers, right? That is, we can put code, we can put scripts inside of scripts or functions. Think of this as a function or however you want to look at it. So we need to go back to our idle state. We need to add this in there. So we need to be able to say calc movement. We need to add that in there. So we're going to add our calc movement script like that. So now whenever because this is whenever we're inside of our idle state, we're going to have access to our get inputs. We're going to have access to our movement code. If you don't want to be able to move, you can just not have the movement code in there, and even if they have get inputs, they won't be able to move because the movement code's not there. Let's also put this inside of a walk state. So I already copied it. We're going to paste it. So now we have it in both scripts. So now, regardless of what state we're in, right now default is going to be the idle state. Make sure that's true. Do I have somewhere where? Well, right now is it true? Hold on, let me see. Yeah, because I'm telling it 0. So states array equals 0, which is here. So right now, what default is 0. So let's go ahead and run this real quick. And now you can see I can move left or right. And notice when I let go, it kind of skids to a stop. See that? It doesn't like stop immediately. It kind of has this, nice fade. And that's what all that little code did there for us. Now we have movement. But right now we're just staying in idle state. We're not doing anything else. We're just stuck in idle state. To make sure that we can see this is working, before we learn how to do the enumerator part, which is how to change the zeros to words so it's easier for us to say how to switch states, I just want to show you. I think if we understand it like an array first and just understand this aspect of it, the array linking to our scripts, it'll be easier to understand. Once you understand that, then doing the enumerator part I think will be a lot more easier to understand. Alright, so what we need to do is we need to add some sort of animations just where we can see a difference between our states. And all I'm going to do for that, I'm going to go to player idle. We're going to edit this image. We're going to make a copy of it. So right click on it, choose copy, right click paste. There we go. I'm just going to take this and shrink it. That's all I'm going to do. So just take this tool here, left mouse drag over it, and then we're going to take this tool. No, wait, that's a flip brush tool. I think actually all I have to do is hit the arrow keys. Yeah, just move this down like, first we'll move it down just one, like that. So just hit that down key one time. We're going to then copy this and paste this. Now we have a copy of this. We're going to select it again. We're going to put arrow key down one more time. Like that. So now we're going to copy the second one, click on this one, and then paste it. So now we have something that looks like it's going up and down, see? So it goes down 1, down 2, down 1, back to 0. And just loop that, and it'll kind of look like it's breathing. We're going to turn this way down, the speed of the animation. We'll turn down to like 4. Let's check that. Yeah, so that's cool. That's a good idle. Alright, so now we have a cool idle state. And now we need to create a walk state. And for walking, I don't know what to do. We can do all kinds of stuff for walking, but I'm going to go ahead and we'll just do this. So let's make a copy of this. So right click on it and choose duplicate. Then we just need to rename this to walk at the end, like that. And we're going to get rid of these like that. Go to edit image. And so now we need to make it do something, make it look like it's walking. So for the first one, I think I'm just going to maybe delete yeah, I think we'll just delete squares. Let's try that. So let's delete maybe this square over here. I'm just going to literally use the eraser tool, and we're just going to crudely do this really fast. Let's delete that one, and copy this. Actually, hold on, let's go back. Let's keep our original, just in case we need it. Copy and paste this real quick. Click on this one. We're going to erase it right there. Copy the original again. Click here, paste it, and now we're going to delete this side. Okay, so that's our little walk animation. Whatever, it's fine. We'll change the speed here a little bit faster. Yeah, it kind of gives an idea of walking. Okay, so that's all we're going to do for now. Now this is where you can have your complicated, awesome, animations, and you can switch between your idle animation, which will be just standing there, and then your walking animation, as you saw in my game. Okay, but for now that was a really easy way to get animation, and we can see that they're different. So now we need to switch. So when we're in our idle state, we're going to, well, actually let's just go to the game. Let's open the game really fast by hitting play up there. And you're going to see right now nothing's going to happen when you walk, but notice when you're idling, you're breathing, see? So we do have an idle animation, but notice when I'm walking, it's still the idle animation. It's not switching animations. And that's something that our states allow us to easily do as we switch to our states. So right now we're not switching states. We're default staying in our idle state. We want to make it to where once we start moving, it switches to our walk state. And now we're going to have a visual representation that that's happening. This is all going to be temporary code we're writing right now because we're going to go back and erase it once we do the enumerator. But let's just go ahead and just to show you that you can see how the states are working, how to get between the states using the sprite array, or the states array that we're using, or just using an array in general. So right now it's staying in our, this is our idle state. We have that up right now. It's staying in our idle state. So how would you get it to move out of the idle state when we're moving? Well, we just write some simple code, right? We say something like if our HSP does not, so put a not sign, does not equal 0, then what do we want to do? Let's tell it to do something. So this is how I like to write my if statements. You can write however you want. The spacing doesn't matter. People write different ways. Another way to do it is like some people like to do this, and then they write their code in between here. Some people like to do it different ways. So anyway, I like it like this. On the exact same line, that's how I like it. I know it's not typical. People usually would at least indent these two like this, and then have their lines to code start here. But I don't like it like that. So anyway, if HSP equals 0, then what I want to happen, or does not equal 0. In other words, if it doesn't equal 0, then it equals a number, right? Which means I'm moving. So if I'm moving, what I want to happen? I want it to switch to my move script, right? My walk state. So how do I switch to my walk state? I just tell it that now I just say that states array, that's the jor, equals what? Well, I just want it to go to my states array 1 because states array 1 is my walk state. Right, so now if states array, can I do it that way? Actually, I don't think I can do it that way. Yeah, it's gonna tell. I think it's gonna tell me I can't. I guess I'm gonna have to use variables because I can't do it this way. I was hoping I'd be able to just show you that it works this way. Let me see. Hold on. Yeah, I guess I can't do it that way. Alright, well I guess this is as good as time as any to learn how to get past this. So I thought you could do it that way, but I guess not. It doesn't matter because that's not how we were going to do it anyway. So what we're going to do is we need to find a way to say if let's find a way to use a variable to say that this equals something else. So let's say that is, instead of changing the states array, we just want to change this number in here. How do we change that number? We just change it to a variable, right? So let's change that to state. That's going to be our variable. So right now we're in the player step event. Right, so now that's going to refer to state. And then how do I make sure that I can go to each one of these? Right, I need state to equal one of those numbers, right? So I just have a local variable here, or not local variable, but a variable that's to a player variable. And we're going to say state equals 0. So by default, it's going to be state equals 0. So by default, it's going to be 0. If I change this to equal something else, then it's going to equal something else, right? So if I say state equals 1 somewhere else, then this is going to change to 1. Right now this is the same as if I wrote 0 in here. Why? Because state equals 0. So right now this is 0, and this is 0, so it's going to call up the idle state. So everything's the same. We just replaced it with a letter or a word instead of a number. If I somewhere else though change this and say state equals 1, then what's going to happen is this is going to equal 1, right? Because state now this is going to be equal to 1, and which is going to be equal to this, my walks, right? So now all I have to do is go to my idle state by double clicking on it, and all I have to do now is, instead of saying states array 1, I can just say state equals 1. And now it's going to say, because now it's saying if my HSP is greater than 0, if I'm moving, then state equals 1, which is going to do what? It's going to go back to the object over here. This is going to equal 1, and because in other words, this function is constantly trying to see what thing to change. So now something's changed. State equals 1 now. And if state equals 1, then it means that the script it's going to call up is, because now my states array 1, because we changed that 1, right, to state equals 1 now, so now this is 1, which is walk state. So now it's going to call up our walk script. And we're going to switch into our walk script. However, you won't be able to see a difference right now, because our walk script has the same animation playing right now. Like, we haven't changed our animation, so nothing's going to happen. It's going to work, but you're going to see nothing. You're not going to know you're in your walk state. Right? So right now, when I let go, I'm going back to idle state. When I walk, I'm in the walk state, but you don't know that because it doesn't show it. So now we need to actually visibly show that we're in different states. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. We'll go to our idle state here, and we're going to simply tell it to do something, to change our animation. So we're going to call this animation. And right now we just want our sprite index to equal SPR player idle. That little line of code right there is going to tell it to play my idle animation. So this is the name of the idle up here, remember, SPR player idle. So that's what this is referring to. It's referring to that particular sprite, which has that animation in it. We also want to make our image speed equal to 1. that means it's going to, just in case, it'll make sure that it's moving. There's one other thing we want to do though. Whenever you're switching to a new state, you always want to, before you go to that state, as you're going to that state, so right here underneath the state you're moving to, you also want to put here that you are going to image index equals 1. Equals 0, sorry. So this is, so remember, your image index is the frames. So let's go back over here, explain this way fast. This is image index 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is just how it labels the frames. Right? So it's frame 0, frame 1, 2, and 3. So if I wanted to start at the first frame, which is 0, then I need to tell it image index equals 0. This is important. Otherwise, you're going to come across all kinds of weird errors, which I actually demonstrate this in my other video. So if you really want to see that, I don't know if I'm going to demonstrate in this video, but if you really want to see that demonstrated, I would go to the other video. And basically, what'll happen is if you don't have this here, what'll happen is when you switch, let's say, from an attack state back, from walk state to an attack state. If your walk has, I don't know, 5 frames, and you're walking, you happen to be on frame 2 when you hit attack, it's going to play the attack animation from frame 2 instead of from frame 1. It'll look weird. Your attack won't be working correctly. And so if you run across that issue, this is why. Just make sure to put image index equals 0 after you change state. So it has to be within, don't put this within the actual state itself. Like you want to take this line of code and put it directly in the walk state like this. If I did that, then it would never animate, because every step is going to be changing it back to the first frame of the animation, which means the animation will never play, and then it'll just be frozen. So you want to put it right here underneath the state change. Okay, so now it's going to change us to our walk state, but our walk state doesn't have this in it, so we need to put this little piece of animation in our walk state, like so, and change this to walk so we know that it's now changing to our walk animation. There you go. So now this is accounting for a walk animation. This is accounting for idle animation. See how easy that is? Now we don't have to tell it, if you're moving this fast, then do this animation. If you're moving this slow, you don't have to do none of that. That's the power of, that's some of the power of a finite state machine. You just put what animation you want in this state and that state, and just switch states. Really simple. All right, let's go ahead and play the game now. Run the game. And now you're going to see that when I'm not moving, I'm breathing. I'm in my idle animation. When I'm walking, I'm in my walking animation. When I let go, it doesn't go back to, it stays in the walking animation. Now why? Because I haven't told it to switch yet. That is, you need to switch it back to the idle state when you're not moving. So that you're going to do inside the walk state. You're going to write a very similar code to this inside the walk state. We're basically going to say, hey, if I'm no longer moving, if HSP equals 0 means I'm stopped. Oops. So if I'm not moving, then I want to switch my state equals 0, which is, remember, my walk state, my idle state rather. And you also want to change. You also want to make image index equals 0 again, just to make sure. You always want to do that when you're changing states. But just real quickly to show, when I let go, boom, it goes back to my idle state. See? And then you want to say image index equals 0. Okay, so now everything's working fine. We're smoothly going back and forth between these two states. But it's kind of hard to remember, right? This is complicated. Having to put state 1 and state 0, and I can't remember what state is what. How do I know? I have to go back to my thing and try to figure out. It's really complicated. So instead, let's use an enumerator. Now what the enumerator does is it makes it to where instead of using numbers, I can use letters or I can use words to easily refer to what state I'm in. So let's go back. You can right click, go to Windows, Object Player, or you can just click down here on Object, double click on Object Player. We'll go back to our create event on Object Player. Now we need to set up an enumerator, so let's go ahead and do that down here. And we're going to say enum equals states. And then, oops, not just states. And then we need to put some sort of stuff in here. And we'll go like this and like that, just to add some stuff in here. And I'm going to make sure, how come it's kind of, hold on, I want to hold down Alt key, left click on the other side of this, like that, and you can hit backspace. There you go. So we're going to type idle here. That's going to be the first state, and the second state is walk. And that's all we need right now because we only have 2 states. Voila, done. It should update to red, as these should change to red. And it's not because I did something wrong. What did I do wrong? Oh, I don't know why I put equals there. There's not supposed to be equal sign there. Just like that. Everything's returned red now. There we go. Okay, now we basically, now what this has done is it says that this is 0, this is 1. And the next one, if I add another one, it'll be 2 and so forth. So instead of having to write numbers, I can just write letters now. But in order to do that, I have to refer back to the enumerator. So how do I refer to the idle enumerator? I put states.idle, which refers back to that enumerator. So now I can say states.idle here, and they're done. So now this equals 0. And if I put states.walk, that would equal 1. And so now down here, I can change this then to states.idle, that equals 0. What equals 1? States.walk. States.walk equals 1. So now whenever I want to refer to these states, I can simply say states dot whatever state I want to be in. And it's going to, you don't have to memorize what number it refers to. You just have to know that just keep putting whenever you add a new state, just go like this and then say attack. That's another state, and then you would copy this line down here like this, and you'd go like that, and you would change this to attack like that, and you would change this to your attack state, which you're going to create a new script for. Oops. That's going to be your attack state script, and then inside that script you're going to make a new animation and so forth, right? And you can switch between those states just like that. It's just that easy. You don't have to worry about the numbers because it's going to automatically work for you. So now all we have to do is make sure that on our step event, see, state. So now instead of state referring to a number, it's referring to a letter right here, boom, or to a word, to a statement. But that is still a number, so nothing's changed. Everything's exactly the same. The only thing that's different is instead of having to type numbers, that state equals a number, you'd say state equals a enumerator state, which is the same thing as a number. So hopefully that makes sense now. So you see how that worked before, but it would have got complicated having to do state equals 1 or 2 or 3 and try and remember what fucking thing that refers to. Now you know what it refers to. Just boom, type the name. So now all I have to do is go back to our states here, which is our scripts, our idle script. Instead of state equals 0 or state equals 1, what state do we want to be in? We want to go back to states.walk. So now it's like, oh, cool. So if I'm moving faster, I want to go to states walk. So now it's intuitive. Like writing the code feels more intuitive this way. And that's the power of the enumerator. So really cool stuff. So if we're not moving, then our enumerator equals what? Idle. So that means we're not moving. So now everything's going to work the same. Nothing's going to change. But we're going to see that we can easily code now. It's much easier to code. There's our idle state. You can make that breathing, even more pronounced if you really want to see it. But there we go. And see how even when I let go, it kind of plays the walk for a second? That's because it's still coming to a stop. If you want it to immediately come to a stop, you can program it to work that way. Just you have to change how your movement works. You can make the drag a bigger number, for example. So if you don't like that, it's like, oh, that takes too long to go to your object here. Let's change this to a bigger number. So instead of 0.2, I don't know, let's change it to 0.4 or something. That is a bigger number because we're getting closer to the number 1. And then just try it out and see. But notice it also makes it harder to move because it's constantly dragging on you. All right, so now in order to move, you have to put a bigger number. So just keep that in mind. Another thing you can do too is I guess you can have it stop more on a dime by your calculate movement code here. Right now we're telling it if it's greater than 0.1. What if we said if it's greater than 0.4 or less than 0.4? So now it should stop, should immediately turn it to 0 quicker. So the drag is going to feel the same, but now it's going to like snap to a stop faster. And what if we say this, what if equals 1? So now it's like as I'm dragging from a speed of 4, once my speed is 1, it's going to stop. See how it stops faster now? It drags a little bit, but then it stops. So you can mess with those numbers and see what you like best to get the best feel of movement. But there you go. That's it. That's how state machines work. In my other video, I go through more detail on how to create new states. I think I should probably do that in this video too. I wanted to make a faster video, but this isn't really so much. I guess it's a little bit faster, but mainly I described it differently in this video. I felt like the way I described it in the video was a little more harder to follow. I feel like the analogies I use in this video are better. I might just get rid of the other video altogether and replace it with this one. So I guess just in case I do that, let's go ahead. Let me at least teach you how to add another state so you can see how that works. So you have your state machine working, you're going between different states, your character's doing cool stuff, and now you want to add another state to your character. You want him to do something else, like attack or something. Go up here, we're going to copy this. So we're going to duplicate it, and we're going to call this attack. And now we need some sort of attack animation. So we're just going to create something easy and stupid. I'm going to do it even easier than I did last time. Oh, this is kind of cool. This actually, I can show you another thing here. So let's go back here. Let's change the size of resize this. And we're going to resize it this way. So we want the right side to grow. And we just want the width to change. Let's change it to 128. This gives us some room to work with. But now notice that because we have this located in the middle center, it's going to make weird things happen. I'm going to let that weird thing happen so you can like see it happen, and then I'll explain how to fix it and why it's fixing it. Let's go, reopen that again. We need to change the animation. Let's go to edit image. And we need to add some cool stuff here. So for frame 1, let's just grab our pencil tool, grab something like this, grab the same color, hold control, left click, that gives you us a color. We're just going to add a boom and attack, so that's going to pow, come out like that. And then, actually, let's go ahead and make it 2 frames. Copy this, paste this, and we'll add this attack. Bam, like he's throwing a punch out. And then we're going to kind of reduce it. So let's go to copy this and paste this, and take our eraser. We're going to erase part of this here. Right click here, copy and paste, and right click, copy and paste. So now when we play this, it's going to be like smack, and it pops it back. And that's actually too many frames, so let's get rid of this one. Okay, cool, so that's going to be our little punch. I know it looks stupid, but that's fine. It's just as long as we can see that something's changed. Okay, so now we need to add a new, double click on our player here, or right click, object player. So now we need to go and add a new one. So let's go ahead and, it's as easy as this. Add attack. Make sure to put a comma after each one. Make sure they're capital letters. Down here, you can either select this and hit Control C, and then V, or just put it on the same line. If you hit Control C, if you're on the end of the line, you want to just copy that line, just hit Control C, and it copies just that line. Hit Control V, change this to attack, make sure it's all caps, and then change this to attack in lowercase, and that's all we have to do. Then we have to make our attack script, so let's go over here. Actually, we can just copy this walk state, let's say, duplicate this, and then we can just delete that 0, use the arrow key to go to the walk and change that to attack. Oops. Like that. Attack state up here, change walk to attack. We want our inputs, we want to calculate movement. What we don't want is this piece of code here. We're going to be telling it to do something else. We don't want this, instead we want our attack. So now it's going to play our attack animation, which is good. We need a way to get into the state and get out of the state. So remember, default we're in our idle state. So you got to think about what states do you want to be able to attack from? You probably want to be able to attack for both walk and attack, or both walk and idle. Now I recommend, if you want to be able to walk and attack or idle and attack, you probably want to do two different states with different animations, because you want it to look different, right? That is a walk animation. You want it to still be walking and then it just attack while it's walking. And you can do all that. It's not that difficult. But we're just going to have one attack state. In fact, you can also have it stop when you attack. That is, reduce your HSP to 0 while attacking, and by just calculating the movement and then make it to where HSP equals 0. And what that'll do is it'll make it so that while you're attacking, you're going to completely stop, and then until the attack's done, it'll go back. That's how I have my game set up. I just prefer that, because if you can walk and attack at the same time, it allows you to do certain kinds of cancels and stuff that it's kind of like a cheat. You gotta decide what you want for your game. But anyway, let's go ahead and learn just how to switch between these states. So how do we go from, well, first off, what do we want to happen in our, right now our attack state's not doing anything. It's going to play this, it's just going to keep playing this animation over and over and over again. So we want it to only play the animation one time. After it's played its animation, that is after the attack is finished, we want it to return back to one of the other states. And this is something you have to keep it in your mind, is when you attack, how do you make it to where you got to think about after an attack, what states can you be in, because you want to return back to one of those states. Well, you can either be walking, that is pushing left or right on the D-pad, or you can be standing still, idle. So you can return back to either one of those states. You need to tell it a way to do that. And this is where having a coding mind, right? So there's two different aspects of coding. One is learning the language. Learning the language isn't all that difficult. The hard part is thinking about solutions. You have to come up with logical solutions on how to tell the computer what you want to happen. So I know what I want to happen. I want, when the animation's done, to return back to idle or walk, depending on if the player is pushing left or right, or if they're not pushing anything. I want them to go to one of those two states, depending on that. I need a way to tell it that, and that's why HSP is a good thing. Using HSP is a good way to do that. Well, that's what we're going to do. The first thing, though, is I'm going to copy and paste a piece of code here from my game, from my attack script. I'm not going to really explain what this code means. I'll explain what it does, but other than that, you'll have to figure out the rest. Okay, so what this little line of code means is basically my image index, again, that was the 0, 1, 2, 3, what frame I'm on. Image number is similar, except image number actually starts from 1. So if my image index is greater than or equal to my image number, so 0 and 1 are the same thing. So in this case, my image index, the first frame of my animation. So let's go back to my animation. This first frame here is my image index is 0. This is this one. My image number, this is 1. So image number 1, image index 0, the same frame. And it gets kind of complicated. Let's go back to our, where were we at? Our idle? No, our attack. There we go. Going back to our attack over here. So if my image index is greater than or equal to my image number minus my sprite get speed, and this is going to be my sprite index divided by rune speed. Now what this is another way of, I think, writing like -1 or something like that. This is a better way to do it. You'll see the same thing written, but I think they put -1 here. And that just gives weird results, whereas this is going to give you more consistent results across, different, how your game is run. It's just, anyway, it's basically saying that once I reach the end of my animation, so once I reach this frame here, then do something. So it's going to go doom, 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 right? So my attack animation, rather. It's going to go doom, 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 doom. Once I reach this frame of animation, do something. In that case, I want it to exit. Let's go back to our attack state. That is, I want it to exit this and go back to one of my other two states, either idle or walk. Okay, so once the animation's finished, how do I tell it to move back to one of those two things? I just simply say, if my HSP is not equal to 0, then I want it to move to let's go ahead. I'm going to go and indent all this, select all this, hit tab. Then I want it to do what? So if my HSP is not equal to 0, which means what? That means I'm moving. So if I'm moving, in other words, if after the animation plays, I'm pushing left or right on my keyboard, that is, I'm moving, then I want to go to walk state. So state equals states.walk, right? And that's all I have to do. Else, now what does else here mean? Else means if my HSP is not equal to 0, then what is it equal to? It equals 0. So else just means if HSP equals 0. So else, if my HSP equals 0, what do I want to happen? This just allows me not to have to write another if statement. Now I can just do else. Or you can say if HSP equals 0, then like that, but this is a better way to do it. State equals states.idle. So there we go. That's all I have to do. So basically now this is saying when I reach the end of my animation, my attack animation, then if I'm pushing a button to move left or right, then go to walk state. If I'm not pushing anything, then go back to my idle state, because it means I'm not moving. So there we go. That's that, and that should work. Oh, but we need to do, remember, whenever you switch a state, you want your image index equals 0 to make sure that everything functions correctly. Trust me, if you ever forget to do this and have something funky happening, like your animation's not working right when you're switching states, it's probably because you forgot to put this line after you're switching a state. And I think we have that in all of our state switching now, right? I think so, yeah. Okay, cool. Now, how do we enter into that state? Because right now that state exists, but there's no way to get into it. There's this cool attack state, but we can't get that. Remember, in our getInputs script, we actually have an attack right here. Attack equals shift. So we have a shift as an attack. So now we can tell attack if attack, then do something. So watch how easy this is to tell it to go to attack state now. See, like if you're using sometimes like if you're trying to do this without states, you'd have to say, if I'm pressing this key, then, play this animation. It gets really complicated. Now you all you have to do is just say if attack, in other words, if I'm pressing shift on the keyboard, then do what? State equals states.attack. That's simple, see, because we already set all that up in the enumerator and our create events. Now everything's working perfectly. Now we're going to go to attack state. What do we do though? When we switch states, image index equals 0. And then, did I put this in there in this attack state? Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, so I got my animation in here, so everything's working good. That should be all we need. Actually, I can't attack and walk yet, so let's copy that little piece of code we just wrote. Oh, you can write a little note here if you want to. Attack, or attacking, whatever you want to write there. Or, switch to attack. And you can have this like, switch to walk, or just have it say walk, or whatever's easy for. Remember, these notes aren't just for you, they're for other people that don't know your code. So they can quickly read these notes and go, okay, that's what this code is about. This is about switching to attack. That's why I chose to call it that. I think that'd be easier for someone else to read. If I just put attack, it might be harder to figure out, like, what is that code doing? Now they know, oh yeah, switch to attack, I get it. Bam, there you go. So now I can enter into my attack state. Whether I'm in my idle state or my walk state, I have a way to press attack and enter into my attack state. And so remember, you only could be in one drawer at a time. So how does this work? I'm in my idle state right now. If I push left or right on my keyboard, what happens? I enter to my walk state. Right? So now only this drawer is open. When I'm in my walk state, what can I do? I can either stop pressing left or right and go back to idle state, or I can press attack and enter my attack state, which will open up this drawer. When this drawer is open, this code is active. That is, all this code is going to be active in my step event. Right? So this drawer is open. That's the code that's active in my step event. What can I do when I'm in my attack state? Nothing. I just wait for my attack to finish, and then either I'm going to go to my walk state if I'm pushing left or right, or I'm going to go back to my idle state. And there you go. That's it. That's how that's going to work. And so if I'm pressing left or right when I'm in an attack state and it finishes, it's going to put me back to my walk state. right? Or if I just attack and press nothing, it's going to take me back to my idle state. So you just have to make sure that you're calculating for every state going to whatever state you want to go to. It gets kind of complicated sometimes because when you have as many states as I do in my game, you have to really think about, okay, what other states can I go back into from this state? And that's what I have to calculate. So first, think about, you create a new state, you want to think about, okay, what states do I want to be able to go into that state? For example, what if I don't want to be able to attack while jumping? I don't want the player to be able to attack and jump at the same time. Then I just wouldn't put this piece of code in my jump state. Right? So now they can't attack while they're in jump state. Simple as that. If you want them to be able to attack in jump state, you put this code inside your jump state. Now they can jump and attack. Now once they're in the jump state, you got to think about, okay, what do I want them to do inside the jump state? What other states, and once they're in a state, you got to think about what other states do I want them to be able to return back to? Or what other states can they return back to? So from a jump state, they can either, hit attack, and now they're attacking and jumping at the same time. So now, once you add a jump state and you're allowed to jump and attack, then you have to calculate for that here. You have to be able to say, if I'm not on the ground, or something like that, then states, or if I'm on the ground, or excuse me, yeah, if I'm not on the ground, then states equals states jump. Else if HSP, like that, so you have to be able to think about how to do that. So for example, here's how I wrote it for my game. Now of course I have a script that I wrote for on ground that tells my character if they're not touching the ground, then anyway. This is how it looks though. Notice right now this isn't a script because I don't have the on ground script in here, but it's basically just a way of saying if I'm contacting the ground, or in this case if I'm not contacting the ground, then go to jump, else HSP is not equal to 0 state equals walk, so forth. So you can see it's very similar to what I have here. Let's go ahead and delete that. Okay. Let's go ahead and test the game. Everything should work now. And then let's hit attack. Boom. 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 So we can attack from moving. And notice attack is always, always starts from 0 because we did that image index equals 0. But notice you have this weird error. What the fuck? Why is it happening? Why am I moving? And then you freak out and you can't figure it out. You go to forums and then maybe you never get an answer. So it's really easy. Whenever you have weird things like that happening where your character jumps during different animations, like moves a bunch, you're like, what the hell? Why is my character dropping way down or way up? Make sure that this matches on all your characters. So remember, this is not the center of our character. This is the center of this image, but it's not the center of our character. The center of our character is over here. So basically, you want all this to match, right? So the center of the character, which is 32 by 32. So you also want to make this match. Make sure this is 32 by 32, like that. The center of the character. Now, if I would have made this image larger, like what if I would have went like this? Resize the canvas, I don't know, let's change this to freaking something weird like 80. Well, now it's really strange, right? But notice I'm still in the center of my character, which is good. That's what you want. Let's see if that works. See? Everything's fine. As long as it's in the center of your character, it's going to look great. But if I don't put this in the center of my character, notice now to be in the center, it's 34 by 40. It's no longer 32 by 32. The center is not the same anymore because I have this extra space. So you just have to figure out, what that center is of the actual character. Easy way to do that is keep all your sprites kind of the same height and then only have the width change or something. So I'm going to go back to here. And voila. And you'll see it works the same now. But now it's 32 by 32. It just makes it easier for me to find the center. Bam, hit, 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 hit. Right? So you can see I can hit while I'm walking. But notice it keeps moving. So if you want it to stop while you're attack, like if you want the character to have to stop moving while they attack, then just take away the HSP and attack. Oops. That's sprites. Go to your attack state. Right now we have calculate movement. I think you can, I don't know, can I stop? I don't know if I can just say HSP equals 0. Let me see. I might be able to have calculate movement and HSP equals 0 because this is going to constantly override everything after calculate movement. This is going to constantly override it and put it back to 0. So I think that should work, but let's find out. Yeah, see, if I try to move while I'm attacking, it kind of lets me a little bit actually. But an easy way to do that is just go no more calculate movement. There you go. That's it. Like there's, I think that'll work. Should. Oh, actually, I think I have to also. But yeah, see, that works. When I hit attack, it immediately stops. No matter where I'm at, it's like boom, it just stops. Then I can go back. Boom. See? So yeah, there you go. That easy. And notice it instantly stops. But the downside is, though, see that? If I attack, if I'm holding left and I attack, it hasn't finished calculating my movement speed for stopping, like dragging to a stop. And so now it wants to still drag to a stop. So I think if I put HSP equals 0 here, that should reduce it to 0 now. So it should take that remaining amount that wasn't finished calculating. Yeah, see, so now it doesn't do that. So there you go. So that makes it whatever was remaining. Remember the HSP, when you go like this and let go. So if I let go then attack, see I have to skid to a stop. My HSP is still being counted down to 0 by the calculating movement. So before it was, after I attacked, it was still skidding to a stop after the attack was finished because HSP hadn't reached 0 yet. And so it's still trying to reduce that to 0. So once it gets back to the walk state, it's going to reduce that to 0. If you don't like how that felt because it felt weird, then you just reduce it inside the attack script. So now I have no movement speed except for HSP equals 0. So now it's going to be like, bam, it just instantly removes it to 0. And that way it doesn't keep moving afterwards, see? Just stops it. Instantly stop, boom, on the dime. Now if you don't want it to stop on a dime, you can actually put the lerp function in there. So you can just take your calculate movement. I don't want it to stop on a dime. I can just calculate these two things. And now when I attack, it's going to just skid to a stop. So instead of instantly stopping, it's going to go like this. I guess it still instantly stops. Huh. I'm not really sure why it's doing that. It should still slide to a stop. Okay. Kind of felt like it did a little bit, but not really. So I guess there's really no reason to do that then. Just if it feels the same, just might as well have less code there. I'd have to think about why it's not doing that and then think about how I'd have to code it to make it do that. Alright, so there you go. That's how to switch states, how to add new states, everything you need to know. And this video did come out a little bit shorter than the first one. Not too much shorter, but it is shorter. But anyway, I guess it takes a while to write all that code and make sure everything is working right. So now you should fully understand how to do state machines, what they are, how they function, how they work, and hopefully now you fully understand states array, or not a state array, but you understand arrays and how to use arrays. You understand enumerators, what their exact function is, how to use them, and scripts and how to use them, and then the script function to switch states. And hopefully now you know how to use all those functions to create a state machine. And now you can update your state machine. Anyway, even if you don't understand everything we coded here, you now have a state machine that's working and super basic player movement. It's really easy to add vertical movement or jump. If you want to be a platformer, you can add a jump instead. And all that stuff. So it's really easy to do all that. You should already know how to do that anyway. You can easily take the state machine engine and then just take whatever game you have right now. You can plug this into your game. Just take your movement code and put it into the calculate movement. So wherever your movement code is right now, your movement code's probably in your step event of your player. Just copy all that movement code and hit Control X, which will delete and copy it simultaneously. and then paste it into your calculate movement and paste it into here, and bam, and then just make sure your calculate movement obviously is being linked to all your states, and now you'll have a working state machine for your game where you can start switching between states. So anyway, really awesome stuff. It makes life so much easier. Like, let me just kind of describe some of the benefits of a state machine that I use in my game. So for example, in my game, I have a hybrid game, meaning that a hybrid collision. So I have tile collision is the majority of my game. Almost everything uses tile collisions. However, I didn't want to figure out how to do moving tiles, like for moving platforms and stuff, and to jump off and on moving platforms. You can do that with tile, but I was like, I don't feel comfortable enough in coding for tiles and how to move tiles. So I was like, okay, I think this would be much easier if I just use objects. So, and a lot of games do that. So anyway, I just used a different collision system for when I'm on a moving object. That is like a, well, I guess I can just show you what I'm talking about. A moving platform, anyway. Like, you know, in Castlevania, you have a platform that moves back and forth like this. You jump on it and then you can jump off of it. So, and they're kind of complicated to code correctly to get them to work really smooth. And what I noticed is that my game was having a hard time with being on the platforms because all my code for stopping and moving, all my movement code is with tiles. So I had to create within my state machine, I have idle state and I have idle moving state. My idle moving state is if I'm on a platform. And so when I'm on a platform, it does something a little different. And I also have different scripts here for different kind of movement. So if I am, so this is my collision code when I'm with tiles, but also if I'm on a regular platform, like here, I have all my code for a platform. And then I also have all this right here. This little piece of code changes my states. So I have two different. I have a state basically for everything. I have a moving idle state, a moving walking state, a moving attack state. That is, whatever state I want to be in while I'm on the platform, I had to make another state for that to count for the differences. So like my regular idle, this is if I'm on a tile, and this is the idle. This is my idle script, you know, my code if I'm on a platform instead of on a tile. So anyway, that was one thing I was able to overcome pretty easily with using the state machine. Another thing was, like, if I want to switch to swimming, for example, so my swimming code is totally different. Well, this was easy because now I have my swim state, and all I have to do is have my swim movement instead of my regular movement. So normally I have my calculate movement here. This calculates for movement when I'm not in the water. And then also, this isn't my overall movement. I also have my collision, which calculates for my movement as well, as you can see right here, for example. And so this is like if I'm colliding with this kind of tile, that kind of tile, whether it's a platform or no platform or solid, you know, then reduce my VSP, my vertical speed, so forth. Anyway, but I didn't want all that to be active when I'm swimming, because the swimming mechanics is totally different. Not only is the swimming mechanics different, the gravity is different, you know, all that's different. So to calculate for all that is quite difficult without using a state machine. But using a state machine is very easily, because all I have to do is calculate for a whole different movement. Boom, this is my movement when I'm swimming. So everything is totally different. My HSP is different, the drag, you know, like all this is different when I'm in this particular state. So it allows me to feel like I'm moving a little bit different when I'm in the water. So I can easily calculate for that. And this basically turns my game from a platformer into like a top-down shooter or something. This makes the movement totally different. Now I can move up, down, left, and right with the D-pad or with the analog stick, whereas with a platformer you don't do that. Anyway, so it really does change the way it feels, and that's cool. So I can easily, you know, do things like enter into another state. Okay, for example, what if I wanted to create an event where what what if I want to add to my game like some sort of gravity loss? I want it to be like if I'm in a certain room, the gravity changes, where gravity almost becomes zero, or maybe it becomes zero, to where I can just kind of jump and float for a long period of time. Or, oh, hold on a second, what about Mario Brothers? You know in Mario Brothers where if you're the princess, you can jump and then hold that jump down and she'll like float for a while before she finally falls down. You can easily change that. So what if you want an ability, you want to give your character an ability to do that later in the game. But at the beginning of the game, you don't want them to do that. But later in the game, you want them to be able to get that ability. Then, or what if when they jump, oh, okay, what about you have air, right? You have like a, you know how some games will have like visible wind coming up? And if you jump over that, it kind of lifts you up in the air a little bit. It allows you to kind of jump really high, but you have to be over that wind to do it. How would you do that? Well, easily. You just create a state, so that way you say you just make a collision box that goes over that. Basically, draw an animation of wind, make a collision box, an invisible collision box that goes over that wind, and then you just make a state. You make a new state, and you then say if I'm colliding with that object, then switch to this state. That's how I did my swim movement, right? So I basically have this water right here, which is this big piece right here. You can see right here, this big box. So this collision box. So if I collide with this box, when I jump and I touch this box, this water, I just say if I'm colliding with that collision, if I'm having a collision with that, then switch to my swim state. And then that switched me here to this state here, my swim state. And then my swim state, calculates how I move when I'm in my swim state. And so it's an easy way to do that. So in my swim state, I have a different movement. See, I have my swim movement. So I change the gravity and stuff. So there's literally no gravity in my swim state. I could add a little bit of gravity, and I would constantly kind of sink as I was in there, but I was like, I don't want to do that. So when you're touching that other object, you would say switch to float state, and then you would just take away gravity, like I do in my swim state, or you can even have gravity be positive, or in this case negative, so it's lifting you up slowly. It's slowly making you levitate. Or you can say switch to the state, and then when you're in that state, you can say if you're pressing jump, then increase your HSP or your VSP a little bit, and that will allow you to float when you're touching, and only when you're interacting with that particular object, and when you're colliding with that object. And so to the player, it'll look like when I'm inside this wind, I can hold jump and float up, and it's really easy to do. So it's really cool. States allow for so many cool things. You can do so many cool things so easily. For example, I have a fall state, so this allows me to take away gravity and everything and collisions and stuff. So I still have collisions in my fall state. What was it I changed in this state? Or maybe it was my drop state. And I have a state where, I think I called it, drop state. So drop state, I basically take away, so I have a different collision script. And this collision script makes it to where I can fall through platforms easy. And so I just changed my collisions. I just have a different collision script that I created for while I'm in this state only. And so that way I can fall through certain platforms very easily. So it's an easy way for me to say, if I'm standing on this tile, then just, basically if I switch to the state and this state doesn't have collision with tiles, then I just fall right through the tile. So it was an easy way for me to make a way to push down and jump to fall through platforms. And regardless of what kind of platform it was. And all I have to do is just make a new collision state that says I'm no longer colliding with that particular type of tile. So if I hit down and jump while on that tile, I'll fall through it. And then after I fell through it, I just have a timer in this state, which is right here, and that switches me back to my state's jump. I kind of wrote this wrong. I shouldn't have the variables as local like this. I should have them as an actual variable in my player and then change it like that. But this does work. But I had to use these crazy numbers because it didn't work otherwise. So anyway, I need to change this to just using regular variables. Anyway. But yeah, so it worked really good, and I was able to drop through whatever, that platform very easily. So it was really cool. Okay, that's it. This video is now technically just as long as the other one. Talked too long at the end. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this, if this helps you at all, you now have a better grasp or understanding of state machines, and more importantly, not just of state machines, but also of using the enumerator function, or using it's not like a function, I guess, using the enumerator, using using arrays, and then using the scripts and all that. If all that now makes so much better sense to you, please do me a favor, just leave a quick comment and let me know that this has helped you. And if you want to tell me what it's helped you understand, then please go ahead and leave that comment. Appreciate it. Smash that like button. Thank you for watching.